This video is intended for the student that is having a hard time getting shadows to appear correctly on their mesh within the UDK using Lighmass. Okay, so I'll act as a student for a little bit, and it's towards the end where I need to cram and get my stuff done and in on time. So what do? They use Maya's automatic mapping. Okay, so automatic mapping on a mesh, you're going to get this. Now I applied a checkerboard pattern to this to show you the resolution. So pretend for a second that all the good squares here should be the same size. All the checkers should be the same size, and they should all be square. You can see that some of these are very elongated, some are square, some are not square. It's pretty horrible. Okay, now I could lay out some UVs here, but I want to show you something that would make your life a lot easier, and we're going to take this and export it if you did it in Maya. We're going to export it and bring it into Blender. And I'll show you the advantages of that. It's got a Maya preset. And all I have to do here is File, Import, wait for an object, and there's my mesh. Now the new Blender has I think adopted something with the mouse here, so let's look at something here. Invert zoom direction, neat. Turn that off. That's so much better. Okay, so right click here, split area. Go down here and choose UV image editor. Tab to get into edit mode, and you'll see that I have my UVs. Okay. So we need a frame of reference here, of course. What are we going to use? A checker pattern. Now you can generate a checker pattern in many different ways. I'm not going to go into generating that. That's at the very beginning of the actual playlist. If you look under my world building class, I show you how to do that. So I just have patterns, and I don't have the checkerboard pattern. Sweet, so I get to make that. That's right, I formatted my hard drive. So this is how you make it, 128 by 128. Divided by 2. Lay these lines out, that way it has something to snap to. Marquee select to the center. Fill it with some kind of gray. Now, even though you could fill it in with white and gray, I always kind of like use dark gray and gray. It's just easier to look at. Then you make yourself a pattern. And then make the size of the texture you plan on using. So in my case, I'm going to be using 2048 maps. So I grab this, grab pattern, oops, and grab this pattern. Perfect. You'll be using this all the time if you create this, so I would probably put it in a safe place. Now, I use ping a lot now. I used to use TGA a lot, but I'm starting to use ping. Call that checkers. And just in case you want to use it in another application, let's say while you're here, you should probably make a TGA map too. Alright, perfect. So now I got both just in case. To apply this map, all you do is grab a face, hit L on the keyboard, and then go over here to Image, Open Image. Ideally, it's better to have a directory to work out of, but for this video I just chose the desktop. If you can't see it over here, you hit N on the keyboard, and you go down to Display. It's always kind of hid, and you use Texture Solid. So there we go. Alright, now we need two UV maps in order for this to work. One for the light mass and the other one for the texture. So to create two different, we go here, this little triangle, and here's my UV map. I can get rid of this one altogether and create a brand new one. And one more. What you name these really doesn't matter. The UDK uses the first one as the color map and the second one as the light map. The light map one, we're going to do something here. While the mesh is completely highlighted, hit, and just to do that you hit L, then U, and then I want you to choose Light Map Pack. Okay. The image size I'm going to use 2048. Then I'm going to hit OK. Now what Light Map Pack does is this. It packs everything to the point of ridiculous, face for face, onto the UV coordinates. Okay. Now when you go like this, let's say image open checkers, you'll see the whole thing has the same amount of texture space. Everything's the same size, just about, and it should be good to go. Okay, let's choose the other one where I have no UVs. This one's going to be for my color, and what I'm going to do here is start laying out my UVs. And I'm going to think about shadows as I do it. So in this case, if a shadow is falling across this mesh, I'm going to choose to do this. Just like that. And then I'll mark that seam. Okay. And I'll continue to think like this. I know it's kind of being vague about how I'm trying to decipher what is what. Mark seam. But I'm just thinking about, okay, so this one goes across. Now here's an example. Maybe here and here, this seam would be stupid. So let's remove it. And let's make the seam go like this. So now this whole area right here becomes unwrapped. Same with over here. Maybe it would be better to reroute this. And go this way with it. I would still leave these at the corner. That way it unfolds it like a box. Same with this one down here. Okay, Okay, so here's another demonstration. Mark that seam. This you can already kind of see like a little I don't know, like you just gotta visualize it. It's really hard to explain. I'm just trying to get these big huge chunks. And here's an example of what I should do right here is clear this seam, mark it here, and then mark it here. Anytime I have one of these going on, I try to put something in there that will unfold correctly in that area. So I go for each direction. Okay, so since the wall is primarily going to be facing this way out, I'm concentrating on doing this side first. Backside's pretty easy. So here, two pieces meet. Shadows will probably fall in any which direction. I want to take and mark that seam. This is a big chunk. This is almost too big of a chunk right here if I did this whole entire wall, and would ruin my uniformity. So what I want to do here is just go like this, break it up into two chunks. Cool. Now let's see if my madness worked. L, U, unwrap. Okay, I'll apply the image to this. And I like everything except for this area right here. So let's look at this area and what happened. Ah, right there. And over here in the texture coordinates, you can see that everything's lined up pretty good, except for this little guy right here. So what I'm going to do here is choose right there, and that will highlight it over here and tell me what I need to fix. In fact, I did not lay that out correctly in this area. So just like that. And I'm actually going to tear it off right here too. And right here. There we go. That looks a lot better. Now you'll see that this is almost more uniform than the light map pack. So we could possibly use this too. I'll show you that in the UDK. So now that we're done with this, we can export this. Now keep in mind, all blenders are not created equal. Sometimes you're going to have problems with the FBX export. And you'll find that out here in the UDK. Click on your package name. Just going to choose that. An out of date has been detected. Importing different versions of FBX can cause undesirable results. Okay, let's double click on it and see if there was any undesirable results. Good, I still have everything. It looks perfect. Okay, and just to be a devil's advocate about it, I'm going to go in and import the UVs in here, so the checkers. I'll create a material for that. Double click on that material. I'm just going to move this just a little bit so it makes me hit the red or the green check mark, and that'll update it so it has a real-time icon. So right click on it and say copy full name to clipboard. And then I'll go over here to material and paste that in. Cool. I always like bumping up the Lightmass resolution. Keep in mind this will slow down things, but I like doing this. So I'll use 128 instead of 32. And I always use the full precision UVs. Kind of straightens out some things. Not to get too vague on you, but it does help. Close that out. Plop that in my world. And you won't see the advantage of it until you go to build the lighting. I'm going to build under production quality. This video is getting long, but what I want to do is have one video that walks you through the process rather than 3, because they might get confused about which one to watch next thing. Alright, not too bad, not too shabby. Now you'll see a few things like this area right here, this area right here. That's where we're having some issues with light mass. See? So to counteract that, we could try using the other UV set that we made. In order to do that, find in Content Browser. Double click that one. And you can see that channel 0 is the one we laid out carefully, and channel 1 was the light mass one. Okay. What I like to do is do this in Blender though. It's very easy to kind of repair this. You just have to delete the 1 and then import it back in, and you can copy it within the UDK. So this is the offending one. I can just get rid of that and export again. In the UDK, I just right click and import, re-import. Double click on it. Now I should only have one channel. Channel 1 should be gone. It is. Okay. Now, below here, what I can do is use a thing called let me remember where that's at. Generate unique UVs. Then down below, I could say layout using channel 0, UV channel to results 2 is channel 1, and then I can hit apply. Now it'll take, and now I have 0 and 1. All it did is actually kind of spin this around a little bit. Other than that, it didn't do much. As far as the spacing is the same, the UV seams are the same, everything's the same. Cool. Let's close this out and build the lighting one more time. Alright, so much better. See? No anomalies. We have good fall off. You can see the texture or the shadows aren't really crisp, and the only reason that is because it went back to the 64. And here, if you double click on it, you could do the overridden Lighmass resolution on a single chunk. Or again, if you go down here and double click, you can use right there, Lighmass resolution. This one's set to 128, but here it's not adhering to that. So here you would want 128. So not to build it one more time, but let's build it one more time. And just pay attention to right about here where you're seeing a good shadow. So it's starting to get a lot more crisp in that area. Another thing you could do is spin this around and get rid of that checkerboard. That's another thing, just to kind of look at what it would look like without. Get it to the point where you can see a shadow that strings across it like this, and you'll have a much better feel on if it's going to work or not. There we go. Perfect. So you see that shadow, how it goes across the mesh correctly? That's telling me that the UVs are correct on it. So I can see that. If it's picking up some weird stuff like this, you should probably find out where that is and look at it just to see if there's something that might be a rye right there. So in this case, in this area, which doesn't look bad, but what happens here is see this shell? It's very close to another shell. So what I think I'll do in one of the next video is kind of show you how to rearrange the shells to make them a little bit bigger or a little bit more spaced out. That way, you know, you're not getting that bleed across. So in the next video, I'll show you that, part 2. Alright, so this is part 2 of fixing shadows. It's meant as a little series to show debugging things as I go along. I try to repair them and show you how it works. So here I have this weird shadow. Okay, over here, not so weird. Good stuff. Now what I'm going to do here, because I walked away, I can, I don't have the FBX, or I have the FBX, but Blender can't open an FBX. So what I'm going to do is just right click, export this as OBJ, and then re-import it into a Blender. So that's a good way. Let's say you lost or didn't save, you can get it right back. So import wavefront OBJ, and then there's a lot of stuff here. Internal UV1. Gotcha. Let's try this one. And the only way to tell, split area, UV image editor, and yep, this is the one I want. Okay, so both UV sets were about the same. This one, all I do is have to kind of move these shells away from each other. That's what's going on. The shells are so packed next to each other that if there was a problem with the shadow, it's going to bleed onto the next part. This is going to happen in my color, it's going to happen in my light mask, so I might as well just fix this one and then duplicate it over. You'll also see that this mesh has only one. So when it exports out of the UDK, it exports two OBJs. One with the light mask OBJ and the other one with color map. In my case, they're both the same, so I'll just repair one and then duplicate it over within the UDK. So UV set 1. What I'm going to do here is choose island, and I'm just going to move these around. So right click, G on the keyboard to grab them, and I'm going to space them out so the shells are not touching in any way. G, then left to make that happen. And this is kind of like playing Tetris. Just trying to get all of them so they're not touching. And R is to rotate, but if you do R, you should do like R and then 90, enter. Okay, so type out 90 and that'll work. And by George, I think I have them. Okay, so now they're not touching. Another thing I kind of like doing is making so they're not going right up against this. Keep in mind that if this is next to this and this is close to this over here, it'll bleed onto the next part. So all the way across the UV map. So I try to keep it away from the outside edge too. Here's another one. So R90, enter. There we go. That should yield a better result. Okay, I'm just going to export that as an FBX. Export it as worst. Go back into the UDK. And I think I should be able to re-import that static mesh. Just to make sure, I'll double click on it and make sure it's only having one channel. Good. And it's the one that has the UV so they're not touching. That's good. Again, I'm just going to say generate unique UVs, and I'm going to put in layout from 0 channel and put it in the first channel. And then hit apply. Okay, let's close that out. I also have this other material that I created. It's just gray, and I'm just going to copy that and paste it here. Sometimes you'll get a better feel for this. Now, the checkerboards do tell you a lot, but sometimes it gets in the way of looking at the shadows. Okay, I also want something to cast a shadow here just to make sure. So I'm going to use Alt to duplicate the mesh, rotate it just a little bit, and see if I can't get a shadow in that area using another mesh. I find that if you just concentrate on worst case scenario and get that looking good, okay, good, that's nice and complex, I think. This has to go. I'll duplicate this one and rotate it around too. Again, we want worst case scenario. So this tells me there's a lot of problems that could occur here. Each one of these should be at 128 because I duplicated it from the original. And I'll just build Lightmass. Alright, that's perfect. Absolutely smurfly perfect. So you can see the shadows. They have a nice straight line. They're not wavy in any way. They're falling across the mesh quite well. I mean, they're a little bit blurry, but that's the resolution. So I can adjust the resolution to match that. But other than that, just go all the way around. Make sure everything looks okay. And it's good. So hopefully that little series helps you out. Part 1 was basically showing you, what in a frame of mind of a student, what would happen, and then in part 2 I show you, like, okay, so now we step out of the student's shoes and repair the stuff. So I hope you enjoyed.